Hello, welcome to the first episode of our podcast, The Way of the Writer, where we will be discussing all things related to writing. I will be your host, James Michael Wagner, and this is my co-host,
John Christopher Wagner.
We both have pen names as well. Mine is the Gyrich Basgothicus Ladiaquan.
Mine is Zertherix Hemtelig Costello.
And together, we make up portraiture. Now that we're done with that stupid NPR shit, we're going to get down to business. You can call us by our first names, dear listeners, James and John.
Yep.
And basically all the information we said before is actually, it's accurate, even though we did it in that style. So we basically introduced ourselves. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about our background. We're not that new to the writing game. We've been around for a while, but we don't have like professional writing degrees or anything. Most of the stuff we've done has been for like hobbies,
School.
yes, in school,
So like school assignments,
things like that.
papers, short stories we had to write for school, for like high school, middle school, college. So different varying degrees of education.
Now, our background is mostly business, but it does pertain to writing in a way because we use details and stuff. Like a lot of the skills are kind of transferable over, work ethic, all that wonderful fun stuff. And if you want to learn more about our backgrounds, please check out our LinkedIn page. It should be listed on the YouTube page underneath the videos or above the video. I think it's above the video actually, but it is on the YouTube page. So now we're going to get into some kinds of writing we've actually done. The big thing of importance is this series we did, which now in hindsight probably isn't as good as it could have been now, because hopefully our writing has improved. But it was a series called Married with Karu. Now what that was is it was a parody of Married with Children and Roni Kenshin, that fine anime manga, from Japan. We started that in 2004, and the way we did it was a comedy, and we did it by season. So there were like episodes in each season. I think there was 36 total episodes, if I remember right.
For what?
For Married with Karu.
For story. Yes, there were, I think, 36 that we completed.
Yes, and each story was an episode. Now, it's been on hiatus for a long time, and we might do some more in the future, but if we do, it's mostly done. There isn't much left to do with it. And that was really just for fun, and you can check that out on www.fanfiction.net.
Yes, we started writing that series shortly after we started watching the anime. That was around 2004 because we bought the DVDs, and then we started we started writing the series a few episodes into watching the series. So that was done around the same time as we continued to watch the series. We wrote the episodes based around the stuff that we did, involving the characters and things that we saw up to that point in the series, and that went on for a few years, and then, like my co-host said, that it's now in hiatus and has been so for several years.
Yeah, so it went from 2004 to 2007. Now, it is crude, but apparently some people do like it. But it does give you an insight to how fucked up we are. So now, I guess, that's the big thing we did in writing in the past. Also, like I said, I've had some stuff that's been published. You can see that on the LinkedIn page, too. Our LinkedIn page. I'm not going to talk about that much, but other than that, it's been just like little dinky things that aren't worth really going through, like John said, for like school and stuff,
like research papers, usually like educational things like that, which are still beneficial because they taught us about like
the mechanics of
basic
writing.
mechanics of like sentence structure, learning how to not make mistakes in writing,
Grammar, punctuation, spelling, syntax.
because those things are all transferable, whether it be fiction or nonfiction. And then outside of that, for like hobbies, we've written short stories, poems, which really are like little editorials that can be found on www.deviantart.com. That's where we have a lot of our stuff like that you can find things like that.
Thank you for mentioning DeviantArt because I was just about to. Yeah, that's basically where most of our stuff is. So now I guess into the next leg of our journey through literary stuff is our influences. Now, basically, this encapsulates all kinds of stuff. So we're going to kind of go through different things, but there's actually a lot of stuff, like I said, but we can't go into too much detail because frankly we don't remember a whole lot.
A lot of crap.
Basically, the run-of-the-mill stuff, well, the typical answer would be books. We do read some a little bit, but not as much as we probably should.
Mostly what we have read is fiction, and it's usually works by Dean Koontz, Stephen King.
Some examples are like Fear Nothing and Seize the Night by Dean Koontz, The Green Mile by Stephen King. Let's see, I know Death Troopers and Red Harvest. I don't remember the author's name right now. I should probably go look that up.
Intensity by Dean Koontz.
1984 by George Orwell. That's more recent. And then manga and anime. Like, well, we'll stick with manga first because those are books. Like Rurouni Kenshin, Cowboy Bebop,
Wolverine,
Samurai 7. I think that's
Basilisk.
Yes, Basilisk. The Yagyu Ninja Scrolls,
which still isn't completed yet.
Yes,
there's supposed to be 11 books, I think, and there's only 7 released in America. They need to translate the other ones and bring them over. Just as a side note.
Yes, and I think I said the name right for that. It's the Yagyu Ninja Scrolls.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So that's really the end of the book front.
Berserk?
Oh, yeah. I'm
one?
forgetting myself here.
Yeah, how can you forget about Berserk? Berserk is huge. Berserk was a big influence for us. It's actually the thing that probably got me into wanting to write my own series or stories like that because our series is influenced by the stuff that Berserk has, which is like fantasy, ultra-violence, sexual content, things of that nature, but things for mature audiences. So that's kind of so that was the biggest thing probably for us was the Berserk manga, which we highly recommend checking out along with other mangas and animes we've mentioned too.
Okay, I have an update on the author of those 2 Star Wars books I mentioned earlier. The author for those is Joe Schreiber. I just wanted to give credit where credit is due. So basically, he went through Berserk. So, let's see. TV shows, that'll be the next segment. Now, this mainly applies to Married with Karu, but it kind of does apply to the book as well as some of our other stuff.
Very minutely.
Yeah, like in a general way. Because we have like a wacky kind of humor. Oh, I also want to make note is when we're talking about humor, it's not the kind of humor you find in anime and manga, because we're not big fans of that humor. We're probably going to get a lot of hate for that.
That's false face. That humor that's in anime, and I don't really care for that.
Yeah, so basically like King of the Hill, Futurama, The Simpsons, Married with Children, obviously.
Family Guy.
Family
American
Guy,
Dad.
American Dad, South
Basically,
Park.
almost anything Seth MacFarlane does.
Yeah, it's a lot of Seth MacFarlane, so you know how mature we really are.
Austin Powers type of humor.
Hold on, Spaz. Don't get ahead of yourself because we're not in movies yet. We watch a lot of comedy TV shows like The King of Queens,
Roseanne,
Golden Girls,
Big Bang Theory.
Oh yes, Modern Family,
Young Sheldon.
Yep. We don't have to go through every show now, but onto movies, there's all kinds of stuff. Like we're fans of, like The Matrix, all of them. You know, like the Lord of the Rings movies.
Yes, those are good, really good movies.
Like that's fantasy.
The Austin Powers trilogy, like I mentioned before, for humor wise.
Star Wars,
really funny.
Even the prequels.
Yep. Even the original trilogy, of course, and the prequels.
Old school movies. We like dramas, comedies, anything. Like It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, 2001: Space Odyssey. You know, all kinds of stuff that have influenced us in a way. Let's see. What other movies can we list? I think it's a pretty decent list, right?
The Master of Disguise.
Yeah, I suppose.
Because it sucks.
Of what not to do, I guess. Yeah. Oh, Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2.
Oh, yes, Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2.
Now,
definitely.
we could talk about movies, TV shows, and everything. We can splice it in later in other podcasts and stuff like that. But I want to leap off from Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2 because this leads us into our next realm. That's probably the biggest influence besides Berserk, and that's music.
Yep.
Now, when we're talking about music, it's really one kind of music, and that's heavy metal music.
Yeah, basically our favorites are heavy metal and Weird Al Yankovic.
Yes, he doesn't qualify, but he gets an honorable mention.
We do like all kinds of music like folk, blues, jazz, rock, hard rock things like classic type stuff because that's what we grew up on.
Mostly heavy metal though.
But yeah, our biggest
the two
type of music is heavy metal.
The two kinds we're not fans of really are like rap and country. Those are the big things. And maybe techno, electronic dance music. It's kind of not our thing. But anyway, metal music that plays a big part in the book that we're gonna put out soon, and it hasn't come out yet, but it will eventually. Over our dead bodies, it will come out. But we're not gonna go too much detail into the book because we don't want to ruin stuff. We might have to ruin stuff later, but we're not going to do it now since it hasn't even come out yet. So basically, like I said, is metal is in the book. There's a lot of Easter eggs for that in there. You can have fun trying to figure them out when the book comes out and if you actually read it. Yes, we understand this is an awkward pause and it's our first podcast, so give us a break.
Yeah, so we're still learning how to figure things out and how things work because most of our experience has been writing, not in broadcasting or anything. So we're not used to doing things that are like non-writing related.
And also, I want to make a special note here is that with this podcast, originally this was supposed to be one podcast with various segments in it. And we decided to turn each segment into its own podcast, which we thought would make more sense. And there are going to be, lots of different topics in there. Like this one's going to be about writing. Another podcast will be about other things that we'll talk about in the podcasts. And dear listeners, if you're listening to this, we want to thank you sincerely because I don't know if anybody's going to listen to this, but if you are, that's a big achievement. So let's see, where were we? Back to influences. I guess we'll talk a little bit about the book. Um, I think the way it works with us is not just this book, but all the things we write is the order. I want to go through the order of things we think are the most important. There's three of them of 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 what we put the most emphasis on. Number three is world building. That's something we're probably going to take a lot of flack for, but that's fine. World building we think is interesting, but honestly, a lot of times we think it's a snooze fest because a lot of authors get bogged down in it, and then the story suffers. And what I mean is there is no like story; it can just be like a setting or a description.
We see world building as a secondary thing that enhances the story, not as the primary focus. We're more into story, plot, character development that way. So world building serves its purpose and it's important, but that's not where we believe that with the world is not going to be as, how should we say, fully realized as other books where they have like their own languages and they talk about the economies of the countries and they just go into immense detail about many different things, because to us that kind of turns into like a fake history book or something.
Textbook. So he kind of jumped the gun here, but he leads us into number two, which is story. That's a little more important because we tend to care a little bit more about the story than world building. And the story obviously is you should put more emphasis in it. At least I think you should. And to me, that doesn't mean the story has to be super original because there's only so many plot lines in the world, and they've each been done millions of times over by now.
Yeah, what are you supposed to do?
Come up with a whole new story?
I mean, you just can't pull new things out of your ass all the time. That's like impossible.
The best you can do is put your own twist on it, like what we're trying to do. So as long as it's okay for us, it's acceptable. Now to number one. This is probably the most important thing out of, this is obviously the most important thing on the list, and that is character.
Yeah.
Without character, you can have a great story and great world building, and it just flops. You need characters that people can relate to. They need to be realistic. They need to have flaws.
They need to be multidimensional, basically.
Yes, not one-dimensional characters. So we put a lot of work, at least we try to, in characters, because if you can get people with the characters, they can stay for everything else.
You want people vested in them.
Yes. If the characters are good, it can kind of compensate for the story and world building if they're a little more lacking, especially world building, because it's world building 3, story 2, characters 1 for us.
Because with the characters, you create more of an emotional attachment with the reader or viewer if it's a movie, if you have well-developed characters along with that story, because you care about what happens to them within that said story. And with world building, you really can't have that emotional attachment. So that's why it's more like a secondary background thing for us, because we're more about the emotion. We're more about the relationship between the reader and the characters in the story than like buildings and like just like more background type stuff.
Yes, the individual economy of every society does not catch our interest.
That's not the stuff
much.
People remembers. People remember the characters. People remember the story. Mm-hmm. With the world building is, people are going to, remember maybe some of that stuff, but usually you don't hear people talking about that. Gee, that country's economy was so interesting. I mean, give me a freaking break. Remember,
well, I would have
really talks about that kind of stuff.
I think there are people who are interested in that because there are books that do well that are like that. I'm just saying that's not our style. Not everybody's into that.
No, we're not. We're not into that because that's like too dry, or like it would be too like boring for us. So like I said, we're more to the basically to just give a synopsis. We're more into the emotional aspect of storytelling, and then not getting bogged down in like facts and figures and background world stuff.
Flowcharts, pie charts, any kind of charts for that matter.
Anything you have to use calculus for.
Venn diagrams.
or graphs.
We don't want to do math. No. Okay. Well, I guess that leads us to our next part where I guess we'll talk about the genre of the book. At first, it was going to be fantasy, and then in fantasy, it was going to be dark fantasy. But then, after a little bit of research on our part, we discovered that it really wasn't the best fit for our book, the best genre for it. Because even though we do have fantasy elements, it's not the traditional fantasy elements you'd expect, like Lord of the Rings, which has influenced a lot of fantasy books over the years.
Because Lord of the Rings has the typical fantasy elements such as dwarves, elves, orcs, things like that. Hobbits,
wizards.
Yes. Wizards.
Basically a lot of tropes now. But we have kind of like the non-traditional stuff, which I don't want to spoil anything for that, but suffice to say, we think it more fits in line with speculative fiction, because speculative fiction encompasses a lot of different genres, so it's very flexible. But it's kind of like the books that don't fit anywhere else. Like they have non-traditional stuff, so stuff that's make believe, like you made up, but it's not stuff you'd see in typical fantasy books. So yes, it is kind of offbeat in that way, but we just wanted to clarify it so nobody gets the wrong idea. And speculative fiction is very interesting, and there are some articles about it you can look up. But I'm not going to go through a lot here, but it's kind of like for misfit books in a way. Books that have a bunch of different genres in them, but don't necessarily fit really neatly into any one genre. I'm going to get kind
It's like a catch-all.
Sort of, yeah. Also, the book originally was 2 books. Well, no, 1 book. Now it's 2 books. We split it in half because it was kind of long for new authors, so we did that.
We felt it would be better if it was split into 2 books because that'd make it more accessible.
Yeah, so if you read it and you ended up not liking it, it's like, oh, well, I just read a shorter book, not a super long one, so it's a little more attractive to read.
Yeah, so it's not some big long-ass thing that costs a lot of money. Now you get 2 shorter things that cost less money, because theoretically, if you split it up, it could be cheaper, I guess.
Marketing at its finest, my dear readers, at its finest.
Damn straight.
Yeah, let's just swear when we run out of ideas. We can just swear, just swear. Okay, let's see. Is there anything else you want to say about the book? Well, it's not for everybody. Hopefully, it's more for. It's not just for us. Hopefully, there is an audience for it. We'll find out.
Yeah, just not an audience of 2, which would be us.
Not to be confused with the very good video games Army of 2.
Yep.
I guess let's come around back to influences some more. Like I said, let's talk about video games. Like we like Army of 2, Kane of Lynch, all those games.
Kane and Lynch.
Kane and Lynch, yeah. Yes. Super Mario, little bit of Legend of Zelda.
Okay. So Legend of Zelda. Like a lot of the older school type games that we like Mario, Pac-Man, Space Invaders, like 80s arcade games we've grown up playing. We like those. Stuff on the NES, Sega Genesis, Sonic the Hedgehog, Mortal Kombat, because we grew up with all those games. So those are the types of games that we like. And then we also like the newer ones too. We try to keep up to date with the newer ones, like PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 3. Things like that. We do also like the Wii. The Wii did have some very good games, even though it doesn't get a lot of flack for having a lot of shovelware, which it does. A lot of the games for the Wii suck. We're not going to lie about that. But there are good games for it, like The Conduit, Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, and Red Steel. Once you figure out the controls, once you figure out how the controls work, then it's actually an okay game. It's fun to play, and the controls aren't as bad as what people see there. Once you kind of figure them out, then they work. That they're acceptable. Other types of video games. We don't play much like mobile games. The last mobile console we bought was a Game Gear, which was the early '90s. So that tells you right there. That's the only mobile console we've ever owned. I think that's not true. We also have an Atari Lynx, but as for mobile games, we don't really play much like the PSP or the PS Vita or anything like that. We don't play that many games on our cell phones either. That's not not a big thing for us. We usually stick to console games. We have a PlayStation 3 and a Wii and a Wii U, and we also play GameCube games on our Wii 2. So we're kind of behind the times a little bit. We don't have a PS4 or Xbox One or anything like that. We're just, even though we do keep up to date on the new games that are coming out, but they have influenced us story wise, obviously, because that's the only thing you can do with a story. You can't have gameplay with a story. You can't have graphics or sound or anything like that, because those games are multimedia. A book isn't. So things like story and character development and world building are things that we take from the gaming world as influences. And we also have a Dreamcast too. We like the Dreamcast. That has some good games as well, even though that didn't last very long.
Okay, I'm back. Now, if you heard that, dear readers, in the background, that was a phone call. So we did get a phone call during our podcast, which was unrelated to the podcast. But rest assured, it is nothing serious. So
I hope not.
No, trust me, it wasn't. I'm assuming he went through some more influences with like video games and stuff.
Yes, I kind of talked about our consoles that we have and things like, and like types of games we played, like 80s arcade machines and what consoles we own.
Yeah, a little bit.
And
like the Lynx.
We have that. I mentioned that in Game Gear.
Okay.
We don't play many mobile games, whether they're dedicated consoles like the Game Gear or Game Boy, or on phones either. We don't play many of those. Mostly console. You hook up to your TV.
You know, I guess the point of this is that all the we've taken elements from all these things, tried to put them into the book. Like you got action adventure. We tried to make the book more sophisticated, so it's not like totally brainless and stupid, because we've been down that road before. And I guess, like I said, the biggest influence is Berserk, because if he didn't mention it already, it's because even though it's very graphic, it's got a very good story and it's got intelligence.
Yes, one of the best stories in manga or anime that I'm aware of.
Confusing as hell sometimes, but very good.
Yes.
And we tried to take those ideas, incorporate them into a book, because we figured, why should you have a book that just is graphic or smart when you can have both? Have your cake and eat it too. So that, I think, in heavy metal music are the two biggest influences. And of course, there's all the genres of heavy metal music, which we don't necessarily have to go into here. And then there's also, let's see what else about the book. There's going to be some political stuff in there, but it's not going to be like a political book.
And sexual stuff.
Yeah. Yes.
Not much, though.
Let's see. What other interests do we have? Did you go through all the anime shows? Did we talk about anime? Because
we did mention them.
Because a lot of the manga has anime too. Some other ones though are like Witch Hunter Robin, because there's no manga for that as far as I know. And then
Ninja Scroll.
Yes, and then another big show that's really not anime.
Ninja Scroll, the movie and the animated 13-episode series.
Another show that we like. That's not really anime, but you kind of think of it like it is the Transformers 80s cartoon.
Oh yes, the original Generation 1 series.
So you can kind of tell what era we're from, even though we're probably a little older than that era.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were born later than that era, but they replayed it on TV.
Also, I just want to make a note that Rurouni Kenshin also includes Samurai X, because they're related. So that. So I just want to make sure that when we talk about Roadie Cats, we're also including Samurai X in there as well.
It's yes, you always have to be clear about that stuff. So this is just to kind of give you an idea of our psyche on all of this. Let's see. Next, we've any other influences. We've done background. We went through the introductions. We hope this is lively enough for you because we're not new to this. And oh yeah, in the podcast, I just want to make a point here is that it wasn't originally our idea. We were told to do a podcast because it would help our book, like a monthly podcast. So, if you have any complaints or concerns or criticisms about this or any of our other stuff, please don't direct them at us because we're not the masterminds behind this. Please direct them at our mentor Skip Coriel, who came up with this idea. So, of course, I'm not serious. I want to make that clear. I'm joking.
But if you have any questions or comments or concerns or whatever, you can leave them in the comments section below this video.
Yes, and feel free to email us too with anything that we're serious about. If you want to shoot us anything, like you said, in the comments section or an email, because I think our email address is on the page too. So let's see.
So feel free to contact us.
Oh, I want to also talk about another thing about the book is that we're at the stage now where we've revised it a couple times. We've done a couple drafts, and now we're getting it ready to go to an editor. We don't know the editor yet, but we're heading down that road. And when the book started out, is that there was a lot less description than what there should have been. There's a lot of dialogue.
It was started in 2009.
Yes, May 2009. When he graduated from college, and me, I was going to graduate that year. It was the last month. So anyway, back to the book, is that it was almost written like a script. There was a lot of dialogue,
Way more dialogue.
Yes. So when we revised it, we had to amp up the description and take out some of the dialogue or turn it into descriptive dialogue to make it more like a traditional book.
Way too much detail for certain things instead of being more general with stuff.
Way too specific for little things that
didn't matter.
Yes, because when you read a book, the idea is they have the reader fill in a lot of the blanks to use.
Give them the basic idea of what something looks like. Not sit there and explain every little thing of what something looks like in excruciating detail. Because it's annoying and it really bogs down the writing and really makes it slow, like at a glacial pace.
You don't want to overcook the pot. No, sir, you don't want to do that.
Book's supposed to be interactive, so the reader's supposed to have some kind of, I don't want to say input, but they have to interact with the book at some degree.
A book is supposed to engage the readers. They use their imagination to fill in the blanks. You give them a general idea, but you don't draw out every stupid little detail for them. We're not going to hold your hands here, people. I mean, heck, you're mature adults, and if you're not adults, hopefully you're mature enough that you can handle this yourself. And if you can't comprehend a book, you shouldn't be reading it in the first place. My shallow attempt at humor. We're pretty the sound effects are scarce around here, so we have to improvise a lot.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, and then we had to, like I said, we had to cut stuff out of the book, but also add some stuff in. So in the large scope of things, at the end of it, the version we have now, it ended up being longer than it was before.
Yes.
We added more than we took out. But we did take out stuff we thought was unnecessary.
Unnecessary details. Try to make sentences more efficient by making them shorter.
No more words than necessary.
Big, complicated words, we remove that as well. but we added new scenes, though, more things that, like emotional things, not just stupid little fact things that don't matter to people, like how objects or people look. We tried to make so we added more. So we replaced that stuff with like more stuff you should have, like scenes, emotional stuff that adds to the story, hopefully,
And
adds more layers to it.
and of course, none of this we really learned in. Well, some of this we learned in school, like the mechanics of writing and stuff. But a lot of this stuff we just did on our own by looking up articles on the internet and stuff. So this isn't coming from two people who have degrees in English or anything. So a lot of this stuff is self-taught, and hopefully, we were able to pull it off. So this is just opinions from two people who are not experts.
Yep.
So take that for what it's worth, people.
Take that with a grain of salt or whatever the phrase is, or salt mine.
And as for the plot of the book, the synopsis, I should say, because I'm not going to give away the plot here, because that sucks all the fun out of it. I hate when people do that. They just tell you stuff and they don't say spoiler alert beforehand, which that will be coming up soon enough.
Spoiler alert: there won't be any spoilers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's go with that.
Because we don't like them.
Oh, I think I could use a cup of coffee here.
We think they suck, so...
Yes. I think I'm falling asleep here. But anyway, let's see.
Oh. We're still here, folks.
Yes. So, like I said, before when we started the book, that was over 8 years ago. So it's been a very, very slow process, but we're getting there, and we hope to kind of increase the speed here. And we have put older versions of the book up on different websites, for free, to try and get feedback. And there's been a little feedback, but not as much as we would like.
Not much that's been helpful.
No. Of course, there are people that hate our guts, or hate the book at least. But that's expected. That's kind of the thing.
With everything.
Yes. When it comes to being an author, the rule of thumb is you can always be outnumbered or outgunned, but never out-armored. So what that basically means is you got to build up a thick skin here, because if you don't, then they're going to eat you alive out there.
Shit you out.
Yes, even if you have a lot of haters and they throw a lot of stuff at you, just gotta kind of blow it off and improve your craft. So now I'm getting philosophical here, because we have nothing else to do. So that's the thing. But the point of this is that there wasn't a lot of feedback, and we just tried to improve the book, make it better. And when it is done, we're not going to just put it up on the internet for free. This time we're actually going to just sell it at some websites.
Monetary values that will be determined later.
Yes, that will be in the foreseeable future. And then also, we're going to do, when the book does come out, we're going to promote it in some ways, which we're not going to get into too many details about it now, because we don't know all the details. We're still working on it, but we are going to do something to promote it. I think I can kind of mention what it is, even.
Sure.
Do you want me to? Okay. We're gonna get for a certain amount of time. I don't know how long, because these are the details we don't have yet. What we're gonna do is we're gonna donate some of the proceeds from the books, the money we make from it, to charity. And we have to pick the charities and figure out how much is going to it or them, and then how long we're going to do it. So that's just something to keep in mind. That's going to be like a promotional thing. So there's actually a lot of stuff going on. This takes a lot of time. So when people say, like, they think they say, like, writing's easy or not, it's not, because there is a lot of work. There's more than you think. Obviously, if you're a writer, you know that. So this has been going on for a long time, and And I know this podcast seems kind of all over the place and jumpy, but hopefully we can maybe get a better setup as we go on and try. We're trying to be lively here.
And smooth things out.
Yeah, smooth things out because we're new to this.
Okay, I guess.
Let's see. I just want to make sure if there's anything else we need to go over for our first podcast of our first show.
I don't think so.
I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
Okay, so
hold on. We're not exactly at the end because the last thing we want to do is we're gonna hear a word from our sponsors, and well, that's us really. We're our own sponsors, so try and wrap your head around that one. So I'll leave you with that, and I guess I want to just say for John, and we'll see you next time.
And don't forget to leave comments in the comments section, bitches.
So this is James Michael Wagner and
John Christopher Wagner
signing off.
For John.
Why, hello there, little Billy Smith.
Oh, it's you, Mr. Red Bookman. Whatever brings you here today, sir?
Well, Billy, I just wanted to check up on my favorite neighbor's son. So, what have you been up to today?
I'm afraid not much, sir.
May I ask why?
Well, you see, Mr. Bookman, there's not a whole lot to do in the fallout shelter during nuclear war.
I see. It's a good thing I stopped by then. I might have a way for you to pass the time.
Gee golly, sir, you mean it?
Yes, I do, Billy. It just so happens a new ebook is hitting the market in the near future. It's called Hexamortal Between Revolution's Wings, Book 1, Part 1. And it's by John and James Wagner.
Wow, you've intrigued me, and I wish to hear more. What's it about?
This is the novel synopsis, son. In response to rumors about the Tablet of Omenu, Hexamortal head to the city of Alone in the country of Omad. There, the diverse team of vagabonds learn the city's government possesses the artifact. They also learn the government consists of individuals who believe they're gods. Can they free Valone and acquire the tablet so they can protect their world, Valle Talem? Or will the government end them and figure out how to use it so it can start its quest for global rule?
That sounds just swell, sir, but I have one question, though. Where am I able to purchase this fine piece of literature?
You can obtain it at any one of these fine online retailers, my boy. Amazon, Lulu, and Smashwords. There's just one catch, though.
A catch? Whatever could it be?
Because of the nature of its content, it's intended for mature audiences only.
Whatever do you mean, Mr. Bookman?
Well, Billy, it contains ultraviolence, foul language, political incorrectness, hot action, and concepts that may go over the heads of minors.
Huh. I'm able to handle all that, sir.
Maybe so, Billy, but you should really ask your parents for permission before purchasing this fine literary product.
Gee whiz, I sure will, Mr. Bookman. I'll do it as soon as my parents return from searching for survivors among the radioactive fallout.
That sure sounds like a plan to me, Billy.
Darn tootin', Mr. Bookman.
And it's one Hexamortal would certainly approve of.
Ha 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 ha.